The Helios Deep Space Medical Station wasn't much to look at. A collection of interconnected modules orbiting a distant star, it served as humanity's furthest medical outpost. Most considered it a career dead end, but Dr. Sarah Chen saw it differently. Here, 30 light-years from Earth, she could practice medicine her way. "Doctor, the biosensors are reporting elevated cortisol levels again," the station's AI announced, its voice carrying the faintest note of disapproval. Sarah ignored the implied criticism as she pressed her stethoscope against her patient's chest. "Sometimes, Maya, you need to listen with more than just sensors." The patient, a mining engineer with suspicious lung symptoms, breathed deeply as she moved the stethoscope across his chest. "The scans show nothing abnormal," Maya insisted. "But do you hear that?" Sarah asked, adjusting her stethoscope's position. "There's a slight whistle on the exhale, classic sign of early-stage asteroid lung." She straightened up, meeting her patient's worried eyes. "You've been cutting corners on your suit maintenance, haven't you?" The engineer's guilty expression confirmed her diagnosis. "The automated checks all passed." "The automated checks don't catch microfractures in the filter seals," Sarah explained, already preparing a treatment plan. 2 weeks of bronchodilators and you're grounded until I personally inspect your suit." As her patient left, muttering about lost mining time, Maya spoke again. "Your insistence on physical examinations is highly inefficient, Dr. Chen. The statistical probability of human senses detecting something our sensors miss is—" A blaring alarm cut off the AI's lecture. Red emergency lights flooded the medical bay as Station Commander Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. "Dr. Chen to the command center immediately." This is not a drill. Sarah's heart raced as she made her way through the station's corridors. The command center was chaos when she arrived. Officers shouting over each other, displays showing impossible readings, and in the center of it all, Commander Rodriguez staring at a main screen filled with symbols unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. "What's going on?" she asked, pushing through the crowd. Rodriguez turned, his face pale. "We're receiving a distress call. First contact scenario." He gestured to the screen. "They say they're from something called the Collective of Advanced Worlds. Their ship is carrying 10,000 colonists in stasis, and they're dying from some kind of epidemic their medical eye can't solve." "Why contact us? Surely they have better." "That's the thing," Rodriguez interrupted. "They've tried everything. Their medical technology is centuries ahead of ours. But their computers are giving them contradictory readings, their automated treatments are failing, and they're watching their people die while their AIs debate probability matrices." He took a deep breath. "They found our station's records. They know we still practice primitive medicine here. They're requesting our help, specifically yours, Dr. Chen." Sarah stared at the screen, where new symbols were appearing. The translation software converted them. "To the human healer who still trusts her hands more than machines, our technology has failed us. We require your primitive wisdom. Please respond." A smile slowly spread across Sarah's face as she reached for her old-fashioned medical bag. "Tell them I'm on my way. Sometimes the old ways are exactly what you need." The massive alien ship that appeared through the station's viewport defied description. It seemed to be made of living metal, its surface rippling with colors that shouldn't exist in normal space. As Sarah's shuttle approached, she couldn't help but wonder if she was in over her head. These beings had mastered interstellar travel, created AI beyond human comprehension, and yet they needed her. "Approaching vessel, this is Dr. Sarah Chen of Helios Station," she broadcast. "I'm responding to your medical emergency." The response came instantly, the translator struggling to keep up with the alien concepts. "Gratitude/relief. Human healer Chen. Our situation grows dire. 912 colonists have already terminated despite optimal computational solutions. We require your inferior/reliable methodology immediately." As her shuttle docked with the alien vessel, Sarah checked her medical bag one last time. Stethoscope, reflex hammer, ophthalmoscope, simple tools that had served doctors for centuries. Sometimes, she muttered to herself, the most advanced technology is knowing when not to rely on technology at all. The airlock cycled, and Sarah Chen stepped into history, the first human doctor to treat an alien species, armed with nothing but a century-old medical bag and the determination to prove that human intuition still had a place in the universe of tomorrow. The alien medical bay was a testament to technological advancement and current futility. Holographic displays filled the air with cascading medical data, while robotic arms hung idle from the ceiling, their purpose unclear to Sarah. But what caught her attention were the patients. The aliens, which called themselves the Enxhar, were unlike anything she'd imagined. Their bodies seemed to be composed of translucent crystalline structures, pulsing with internal bioluminescence. But many of these lights were dimming, their natural rhythm disrupted by what appeared to be dark patches spreading through their crystalline forms. Your arrival brings hope/uncertainty, her guide, Chief Medical Officer Valerx, communicated. Their form shifted colors as they spoke, the translator converting their light patterns into words. Though your methods are antiquated/intriguing. Sarah approached the nearest patient, her eyes drawn to the spreading darkness within their crystal matrix. Tell me about the first case. When did symptoms appear? The medical eye's voice filled the chamber, projecting detailed holographic charts. Initial anomaly detected in colonist group 7, approximately 47 standard cycles ago. All standard protocols were implemented. Success rate, 0%. That's not what I asked, Sarah interrupted, pulling out her penlight. I want to know what the first patient experienced. Their symptoms, in their own words. Valerx's color patterns displayed confusion, but the AI's observations are perfect/complete. Why would subjective experience matter? Because sometimes what a patient feels tells us more than what our instruments measure. Sarah directed her penlight into the crystalline structure of the patient before her, watching how the light refracted. Has anyone actually examined these patients physically? The question caused visible distress among the alien medical staff, their colors flickering rapidly. Physical contact is primitive/unnecessary. Our sensors can. Your sensors haven't solved this. Sarah cut in. She turned to the patient. May I touch your surface? I need to feel the texture of these dark areas. The patient's colors shifted in what Sarah interpreted as consent. Carefully, she ran her fingers along their crystalline surface. The healthy areas felt smooth and warm, but the darkened patches were different, slightly rough, with an almost granular texture. Like crystallization, she muttered, or maybe more like coral disease. She pulled out her microscope, an actual optical microscope that drew shocked color patterns from the alien staff. That device is hopelessly primitive, the medical eye announced. Our quantum imaging systems can see too much, Sarah finished. Sometimes you need to look at the bigger picture. She adjusted the microscope's focus, studying the boundary between healthy and affected crystal. This reminds me of something. Valerx, what's the basic composition of your physical forms? We are silicon-based life forms, Valerx responded. Our bodies are complex crystal matrices that. Silicon-based. Sarah straightened up, excitement in her voice. And these colonists, they were in stasis, right? In some kind of suspended animation. Correct. Our stasis technology preserves life functions at near-zero energy states. Sarah began pacing, her mind racing. Temperature control. It has to be about temperature control. In silicon-based crystals, even minor temperature variations during formation can cause structural anomalies. What if she spun to face Valerx? What if your stasis fields aren't failing? What if they're working too well? The medical AI projected another series of charts. Temperature regulation is perfect within all parameters. That's exactly the problem, Sarah explained, growing more confident. Your bodies aren't meant to be kept at a perfect temperature. Living things need variation, minimal stress that keeps their regulatory systems active. By maintaining absolutely perfect temperature control, you're actually preventing normal crystal maintenance processes. She grabbed her medical bag and pulled out a simple thermal scanner, practically an antique compared to the alien technology surrounding her. Look at the heat distribution in healthy tissue versus affected areas. She projected her readings alongside the eye's complex data. The affected areas show signs of uniform crystalline structure. Too uniform. Living crystal needs slight imperfections to remain adaptable. The alien medical staff gathered around her simple thermal readings, their colors showing increasing interest. Valorx moved closer. You suggest our perfection is causing harm/death. I'm suggesting that life isn't meant to be perfect, Sarah replied. These dark patches, they're not a disease. They're more like freezer burn. Your people's natural processes for maintaining their crystal structure have been suspended too completely. She turned to address the medical AI directly. You need to introduce controlled temperature variations into your stasis fields. Not much, just enough to maintain basic biological processes. Sometimes the most sophisticated solution is to be a little less sophisticated. The medical bay erupted in a cascade of colors as the alien staff processed her theory. Valorx's form pulsed with rapid calculations. The concept is primitive/brilliant, but modifying the stasis fields carries tremendous risk. Greater risk than doing nothing. Sarah challenged. She gestured to the ward full of dying patients. Sometimes you have to trust in nature's wisdom, even silicon-based nature. After what felt like hours of debate, with the medical eye calculating failure probabilities and the staff shifting through spectrums of doubt, they agreed to try her solution. Sarah helped them modify the stasis fields, introducing subtle temperature variations that mimicked natural biological rhythms. The results weren't immediate, but they were unmistakable. Over the next several hours, the dark patches stopped spreading. In some patients, the affected areas began showing signs of natural crystal regeneration. As Sarah watched the monitors display slowly improving vital signs, Valorx approached her. Your primitive wisdom has shown us something important/disturbing. In pursuing perfection, we forgot the wisdom of imperfection. Sarah smiled, packing away her simple tools. That's the thing about medicine. Sometimes the most advanced thing you can do is step back and let life do what it does best: adapt and survive. The next 12 hours aboard the alien vessel tested every medical principle Sarah had ever learned. While her initial solution showed promise, the crisis was far from over. More colonists were emerging from stasis with similar symptoms, and the HFY medical staff struggled to adapt their highly automated systems to her more nuanced approach. Your methods are inefficient/time-consuming, Valorx observed as Sarah physically examined her 20th patient of the cycle. Their color patterns showed a mix of frustration and fascination. Our scanners could process hundreds in the same time period. Sarah adjusted her stethoscope's sensitivity to better capture the unique resonant frequencies of the crystalline beings. But would your scanners notice this? She gestured for Valorx to listen. This patient's core resonance is different from the others. There's a harmonic pattern I haven't heard before. The ship's medical eye immediately projected a complex wavelength analysis. All frequencies are within normal parameters for quiet, Sarah commanded, earning shocked color flares from the attending staff. Valorx, listen. Really listen. After some hesitation, Valorx extended a sensory appendage to touch the patient's surface. Their colors shifted to patterns Sarah had learned to recognize as surprise. There is discord/disruption in the tertiary matrix. How did our sensors not detect this? Because your sensors are programmed to look for what you expect to find, Sarah explained, making notes with an actual pencil, another practice that bewildered the aliens. They filter out noise that might actually be important. Human doctors learn to use all their senses to notice patterns that don't fit expectations. A new patient arrived, their crystalline form showing severe degradation. Sarah recognized the attending physician, Dr. Angstel, whose initial skepticism had gradually turned to cautious respect. Dr. Chen, This case presents unusual complications. Sarah approached, immediately noting how the dark patches formed asymmetrical patterns unlike previous cases. She reached for her medical bag, but Nextel's colors flashed with urgency. "Our protocols indicate immediate stasis reintegration," they announced. "The medical eye calculates." "The AI calculations are what got us here," Sarah interrupted. She pulled out a simple ultraviolet light, technology that would have been outdated on Earth centuries ago. "Look at how the affected areas fluoresce differently. This patient wasn't in standard stasis, were they?" Nextel's colors shifted to what Sarah now recognized as embarrassment. They were part of an experimental group. "We were testing an enhanced stasis protocol designed to achieve even greater metabolic suspension." "Even greater perfection," Sarah sighed. "Show me the stasis pod specifications." The medical AI projected detailed schematics, but Sarah waved them away. "No, take me to the actual pod. I need to see it." The request caused another stir among the staff. Valex's colors showed concern. "The stasis chambers are restricted/sacred. Our technologies are failing," Sarah finished. "Sometimes you have to look behind the curtain." The stasis chamber level was vast, stretching seemingly endless rows of crystalline pods. Sarah approached the experimental section, her hand running along the surface of a pod. "These feel different. The resonance is wrong." She pulled out her tuning fork, another primitive tool that had drawn disbelief from the alien staff. Striking the fork against her palm, she held it to various pods, listening intently. "There's a harmonic disruption in the field matrix. Your enhanced protocol isn't just suspending metabolic processes, it's forcing them into patterns they were never meant to follow." The medical eye's voice filled the chamber. "All field harmonics are optimized for machines," Sarah cut in, "not for living beings." She turned to Valix and Nug's telephone. "Your people evolved in natural crystal formations, right? Under the influence of natural geological processes." "Correct. Our ancestral forms developed in the crystal caves of our homeworld," Valix confirmed, their colors showing growing understanding, "where temperature and pressure variations created the very conditions that shaped your biology," Sarah finished. "You can't just override millions of years of evolution with technology, no matter how advanced it is. Life needs its rhythms, its cycles, its imperfections." She began adjusting settings on the experimental pods, much to the eye's protest. "We need to reintroduce something that your technology has engineered away: natural variation. These enhanced pods are too perfect, too controlled. They're not preserving life. They're forcing it into stasis by brute computational force." Working with the increasingly receptive alien medical team, Sarah helped modify the stasis protocols. Instead of seeking perfect homeostasis, they introduced subtle variations that mimicked natural geological cycles. It wasn't just about temperature anymore. They adjusted pressure, electromagnetic fields, even subtle gravitational fluctuations. "Your ancestors evolved in dynamic environments," Sarah explained as they worked. "Your bodies need these small variations. Perfect stasis isn't just unnatural, it's actively harmful to living systems." As they implemented the changes, the results were dramatic. The dark patches began to recede, and the natural luminescence of the affected colonists started to restore itself. But perhaps more importantly, Sarah noticed the alien medical staff beginning to change their approach. They started touching patients again, listening to their resonances directly instead of relying solely on sensor data. They began keeping handwritten observations alongside their computational records. They were learning to trust their evolved senses alongside their advanced technology. "We had forgotten something important/fundamental," Valix admitted as they watched another patient's crystal matrix begin to heal. "In pursuing technological perfection, we lost touch with our biological wisdom." Sarah smiled, patting her old medical bag. "That's why I keep these old tools. They keep me connected to the fundamentals of medicine, to the art of healing, not just the science of it." The success of Sarah's primitive methods had far-reaching consequences beyond the immediate crisis. As more colonists recovered, the HFY medical staff began to fundamentally question their over-reliance on automated systems. But not everyone was convinced. This deviation from established protocols is dangerous/destructive, Senior Medical Administrator HFY declared during an emergency council meeting. Their crystalline form pulsed with agitation patterns. We cannot abandon centuries of medical advancement because of one primitive success. Sarah stood her ground before the assembled council, her simple medical bag still at her side. No one's suggesting abandoning your technology. I'm proposing integration, not replacement. Your medical science is incredible, but our medical science has extended our lifespans by millennia. HFY interrupted, their colors flashing what Sarah had learned to recognize as dismissal. We eliminated disease, perfected stasis technology, and yet your colonists were dying. Sarah countered quietly. Technology isn't the enemy here. Neither is traditional medicine. The enemy is believing that any single approach has all the answers. Valorx moved forward, their colors showing support. Council members, consider the data. Since implementing Dr. Chen's hybridized approach, recovery rates have increased by 84.3%. But more significantly, we're seeing something unexpected. The medical AI projected new statistics, and Sarah smiled as she saw what they revealed. The colonists treated with her modified protocols weren't just surviving. They were thriving. Their crystal matrices showed stronger regeneration patterns than the control groups from previous colonial expeditions. It's like muscle atrophy, Sarah explained. When you remove all stress from a biological system, it weakens. Your perfect stasis technology was too perfect. By reintroducing minimal natural stresses, we're not just maintaining your people's bodies, we're strengthening them. Dr. Angstel, who had become one of her strongest allies, stepped forward. Their colors shifted through patterns of excitement as they shared their own observations. We've begun applying Dr. Chen's principles to our regular medical procedures, not just the stasis protocols. The results are illuminating/revolutionary. They projected images of recent patients, HFY suffering from various ailments unrelated to the stasis crisis. In each case, treatments combining their advanced technology with more naturalistic approaches showed better outcomes than either method alone. Watch this, Angstel said, displaying a recording of a recent procedure. They were treating an HFY child with crystal lattice disruption, a common developmental issue. Instead of relying solely on AI-driven molecular restructuring, they had incorporated physical therapy, literally helping the young one's crystal matrix learn to grow correctly through guided movement and pressure. The results were undeniable. The child's crystal structure was more robust, more flexible, and more naturally stable than similar cases treated with technology alone. But it was the next revelation that truly silenced the skeptics. Valorx displayed data from their long-term medical archives. We've discovered something disturbing/enlightening. Over the past 1,000 years, as our medical technology became more advanced, we've seen a gradual increase in crystal matrix instabilities. Our bodies are becoming more dependent on technological intervention, not less. Sarah nodded. It's like an immune system that's never challenged. Without some exposure to natural stresses, biological systems become fragile. Your technology is amazing, but it needs to work with your biology, not completely override it. The council chamber erupted in complex color patterns as the implications sank in. Their pursuit of perfect health through perfect technology had actually been making them more vulnerable. There's more, Sarah added, pulling out her notebook, still drawing looks of bewilderment from some council members. I've been studying your physiological responses during hands-on examinations. Your crystalline forms don't just transmit data, they resonate with emotional and social information. When was the last time your doctors actually touched their patients? The silence and color shifts told her everything. In their rush to perfect medical technology, the HFY had lost something fundamental. the healing power of physical connection. Your ancestors, Sarah continued gently, evolved as communal crystal formations. Your bodies are literally designed to share information through resonance and touch. By removing all physical interaction from your medical practice, you've been cutting off a vital channel of healing. She turned to Kexti, whose colors had shifted to more thoughtful patterns. Your technology isn't wrong. It's incredible. But it needs to be balanced with the wisdom your bodies have accumulated through millions of years of evolution. Sometimes the most advanced solution is knowing when to take a step back and let nature work. The council chamber filled with harmonious resonance patterns as the Anxar began to accept this new paradigm. But Sarah knew the real work was just beginning. Changing centuries of medical philosophy wouldn't happen overnight. Yet as she watched Valorx gently examine a patient's crystal matrix with their own sensory appendages while simultaneously monitoring advanced diagnostic displays, she knew they were on the right path. The future of medicine, at least for the Anxar, would be a bridge between the old and the new, the natural and the technological, the simple and the sophisticated. 3 months after the crisis, Sarah stood in the newly established Joint Medical Research Center aboard the Anxar vessel. The once sterile, technology-dominated medical bay had transformed. Crystal resonance chambers now stood alongside quantum diagnostic arrays. Medical students practiced both physical examination techniques and advanced computational analysis. Your presence has catalyzed change/evolution. Valorx observed, their colors showing patterns of contentment as they watched a young Anxar healer learn to use a modified stethoscope designed for crystal matrix acoustics. Though not all changes were expected, Sarah smiled, understanding the deeper meaning. The integration of primitive human medical practices had revealed something profound about the Anxar themselves. As they rediscovered physical examination and hands-on healing, many began experiencing what they called ancestral memories, intuitive understanding of their body's natural rhythms that centuries of pure technology had suppressed. Dr. Chen, a crystalline form, approached rapidly, colors bright with excitement. It was Zixra, one of the first colonists she had treated. The resonance therapy you suggested, it worked. My daughter's matrix instability has completely resolved. Sarah examined the medical records, both the AI's detailed quantum scans and the handwritten observations that were now standard practice. The young Anxar's crystal structure showed perfect natural harmony, achieved not through technological force, but through gentle guidance of the body's own healing processes. We're seeing similar results across all age groups, Dr. Engstell reported, joining them. Their colors shifted through patterns of professional satisfaction. By combining our technology with what you call natural healing, we're not just treating symptoms, we're strengthening our people's fundamental resilience. The ship's medical eye, which had initially resisted Sarah's methods, now worked in harmony with the hybrid approach. Integrating biological wisdom with computational analysis has improved diagnostic accuracy by 47.3%. It announced. The combination appears to be greater than the sum of its parts. But perhaps the most significant change was cultural. The Anxar had begun to reconnect with their evolutionary heritage, understanding that their crystalline forms were not merely biological machines to be perfectly regulated, but living entities that needed variation, stress, and even occasional imperfection to remain strong. We have a request/proposal, Valorx announced, their colors shifting to formal patterns. The Council has approved the establishment of a permanent exchange program. We would like to send our healers to study Earth's medical practices while offering our technology and knowledge to human medical institutions. Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. I thought your people considered Earth medicine primitive. We have learned that primitive does not mean inferior, Mextel responded, their colors showing humor. Your Earth saying, necessity is the mother of invention. We understand it now. Working with limited technology forced your people to develop deep understanding of biological processes. This wisdom complements our technological advancement perfectly. The medical bay's central display activated, showing a transmission from Earth. It was Commander Rodriguez from Helios Station. Dr. Chen, the first group of NXR medical students has arrived. They're causing quite a stir. Turns out crystalline beings practicing medicine in our hospitals attracts attention. Sarah laughed. Just wait until they start teaching our doctors about crystal resonance healing. Any word on the human medical students heading your way? First group launches next week. The waiting list is already years long. Rodriguez shook his head in amazement. Did you ever think, when you packed that old-fashioned medical bag, that you'd end up revolutionizing medicine across 2 civilizations? Before Sarah could respond, an emergency alert sounded. A mining vessel had suffered a severe accident in a nearby asteroid field. Both human and NXR casualties were incoming. She watched with pride as the medical team sprang into action. NXR healers activated their advanced diagnostic systems while simultaneously preparing for hands-on examination. Human doctors readied both traditional tools and crystal resonance chambers. The medical eye coordinated everything, no longer dismissing human intuition, but integrating it into its calculations. Ready to make history again? Valarx asked, their colors showing excitement as they prepared for the incoming patients. Sarah patted her trusty medical bag, now enhanced with a few carefully chosen pieces of NXR technology. History is just the beginning. We're building something new here, a medical science that respects both technology and tradition, both progress and wisdom. As the first patients arrived, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come. The crisis that had brought her aboard this alien vessel had done more than save lives. It had bridged a gap between civilizations, between past and future, between the wisdom of touch and the power of technology. The universe, she had learned, was full of wonders. But sometimes the greatest wonder was remembering that the most advanced civilization could learn from the simplest touch, and the most primitive tool could teach the most sophisticated machine about the true nature of healing.